Are you ready to shake out those family trees?
Wow! Yes!
It's Linda and Gina. On the Twice Removed podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Twice Removed podcast. We're your hosts, Gina, and there's Linda.
Yay, season 2.
Yay. Wow, we made it to season 2. Today we're going to talk about writing your family history. And you may think, hey, I can do that. I just have to jot down what I see in this photo and stuff. But I think it's a little more detailed than that because you could do other things with just captioning a photo. Don't you think, Linda?
Well, there's a lot to a photo, too. That's one of the things that I love writing about, is trying to figure out who's in a photo, what their story was, and then doing like a little mini bio on all of them to just kind of prove my point that that's probably who this is in this photo. That is one of my favorites.
And how long could it take you to totally in-depth to do one photo if there were like 5 people in it, say? And maybe you knew one person in that photo.
Well, are there any captions?
No.
Okay. How old does the person that you do know look?
Okay, 18.
Okay. So that helps. That gives me a year to work with. Then who else could these people be at that time? Did anybody emigrate? If not, then...
And we don't know for sure, too, if that's all family in that photo, right? If you don't recognize these people. It could be friends. It could be, loved ones, family.
Well, so I didn't receive any of the photos that I got. They really didn't have too much. Like the group photos didn't have any explanation when I got them from somebody else. So I had to guess. And I'm still working on a few of these. And now I want to go back and look at some other photos that maybe I just overlooked before and try to do the same thing. But, if you really want to know who's in it, I think you can figure out, as long as they're family, you could probably figure it out.
Well, yeah. And I mean, what if you don't have we all have some of us do, some of us don't, but we all have cousins and stuff that you could ask, but obviously they're not into this, so they probably wouldn't know. So if it's just you taking on this task, where do you start with this, since you know a little bit about this?
Well, who did I get the photo from is a good start. If it's from my own collection, chances are it was captioned by my mother, so I'm lucky there in most cases. The ones that I got...
Does she caption all her photos?
Most of them, unless she just grabbed them from somebody and she didn't know who they were. I mean...
My great-grandmother was that way. She wrote down.
Yeah, and I have that one color picture that has my grandmother and her sister-in-law, and there's 5 or 6 other ladies. And it was in 1964 on Long Island. So... you can kind of figure out, okay, well, who is still alive? So you go through the tree, and if you suspect anybody is another relative or whatever. But on the back of it, my grandmother wrote America. That was all I got from her. Or maybe it was my grandfather, either one. But, America with a K, that's all I got.
It wasn't at Disneyland, so
no.
Disney World.
No, but it was World's Fair, which is kind of, a small world there,
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what they were doing that day.
Now, how did you know it was at the World Fair? Did it say it?
Well, that's another part of the investigation, is that my grandmother was wearing the same dress that she was wearing in the World's Fair picture. And when you travel, you only have limited clothing, but I have a feeling that it might have been the same afternoon or day. Just because with speaking to my friend cousin, who was, she was 4 years older than me. She went to the World's Fair and her grandmother took her. And if her grandmother was in that picture, she knew that there were other people that were going in the group, perhaps.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's true detective, isn't it?
It is. It's fun like that. But, besides photos, which are just always great to have in anything because it does grab the attention of the person reading, you do want that. You want them to oh, here's the picture. All pictures, that's what I did with my scrapbook but with actual stories. You could send them out via email to people. You could make up little booklets and self-publish like just a bunch of little booklets, or you could have a few different things that are different stories, and each chapter is like about a different relative or ancestor, and have it made over at, I'm not going to say Amazon because, you know, you'd have to sell it, but like another place that does the self-publishing, that you don't have to distribute it to anyone else except for your family, and just make books out of them, you know. But so what would you write about? An ancestor that you were just like really interested in, figure out everything there is to know about them, how many kids
it'd have
they
to be
had?
my Italian side, and for that matter the Jewish side too, because
Yeah.
they fled Kiev back when, and from what I had heard just recently because of the current situation, that most of the records are destroyed over the first time they had war over there. So that's kind of like, it would just stop, you know, and that's kind of sad. But so that would be interesting to find out more about that side of it. But the Italian one, just because of being from Palermo and the whole mafia thing, and when I always get asked, were you guys mafia? Were you guys mafia? And, you know, the folklore part of it is that they were running from the mafia because they killed the father, and the two brothers killed the mafia leader that killed their father. So, who knows?
Well, the interesting thing about this is, like, for genealogists, some of the most important things to ever get are the birth, marriage, death records.
Right.
BMD, right? So everybody's like, I want to get the BMD on these people. Okay, well, as writers, we know that we like to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like a natural thing. You know, you and I are both writers, so we know that we have to have some kind of story arc here. And if you're going to be writing about somebody, or at least about a situation that, you know, you want to make sure that you have just enough facts to make it a little bit, you know, beginning, and then here's like where all the stuff happened, and this is where it ended. And that's a good story, right? And if you had the ancestor bios, or that whole fleeing Italy, or the mob thing, was there any mob connection? All of that sort of stuff. You would know what your story is.
And would it be the mob connection? I mean, is that just hearsay stuff? There's nothing, unless you found articles, you know, in the newspapers and stuff. Are you going to find the tie? Because I'm sure there's no records that, you know, here's Uncle Luigi with, you know, Joe Mafia.
I found a lot of stuff on Google Books, and also in Family Search. In the books section there, just put in names and towns and years and see, and just, you know, wildcard searches. I found a lot of little things that it helped me piece together people's lives. So if you were to figure out what newspaper was around during that time in that town, all right, I found the name of the newspaper now. Now go to Google Books, put in the name, the family name, and the periodical or the town, and a year, and you might be able to find an article on it, and then copy and paste it into Translator, and it'll give you some really goofy mess of a translation, but you probably could say, oh yeah, that's what they mean by this. Okay, so that's what I did. And it really did help piece together a lot of things.
So what do you? So we do this, and we find out that, you know, yeah, my great grandmother fled here with her pizza pans that we have, and it's still used to this day and stuff. But you know, what do you do with all this information? So you're saying, like, write a book.
Write a chapter,
a story. You could, I guess, like you had mentioned, you can turn it into a video. And you could do a or PowerPoint presentation, or something like that.
Yeah, you could send it to somebody like that, or you could just, have a PDF that you send somebody. Here's my story that I wrote. You might find it interesting, and just
or help add to it, or
if they
squash
don't,
a rumor or something.
We already know they don't know anything. That's the problem, because they haven't shared. You'll know who your people are, because when you're starting to put your tree together on Ancestry or someplace, you're going to find hints from Cousin Joe.
Yeah, I have one cousin, my cousin Stevie, who he had a lot of photos, and he'll go, oh, do you have this one? Or, hey, do you have this one? And here's the sisters, because my grandma was part of 8 sisters. So,
and that's a good storyline right there. The sisters.
Yeah, the sisters.
I did a video called, the Shucky sisters. And it's like all 4 of the sisters. And that's my my mother's grandmother and her 3 sisters, and what happened to them. And one of them was the great grandmother to my friend cousin, and another one is the great grandmother to my one other cousin that grew up on Long Island with me, and then the other one also came to America, and she had the son that was in the military and fought during World War II against Germany. So it's like you have like all of that, and that's a really good topic, because you're just talking about the sisters and their descendants to a point, what they did for a living. They were all seamstresses. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I know like their father when he was out here, owned a fruit stand, and they, help wash lemon. He'd go get the old produce and sell it in the streets and stuff. They were poor and all that stuff. I have a question though. Just to backtrack a little bit about your friend cousin. How did you find out you were cousins?
DNA.
So you were just friendly from before.
We knew each other in Florida. We knew each other in Florida. Hadn't talked to her probably in 15, 16 years. We moved to California. She actually moved to California too, from Florida. We both were born in New York. And we're just trying to...
in California too.
Not now, but she was. And so, so it was DNA, and it's like, could this be the same person with this name? And so,
total coincidence.
So I did a little research on her for about an hour or so, and then I found her mother, and I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting too. And she's matching all of these other cousins. And so I contacted her on Facebook and said, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I have are you on Ancestry by any chance? And is your mother so-and-so? Yes! It's like, okay. And that's it.
Okay, so has she been helpful with your story? Has she brought you new information?
She brought me information on her immediate family and her grandmother. But I brought her the rest of it because she didn't know anything.
See, that's amazing.
It was amazing because she didn't have any idea of any family. She only has one first cousin. She has several sisters, but only one first cousin. And basically, I'm it. And my band of cousins, my first cousins and my second cousins are also her cousins too, at different levels. But, I'm the one she knows. So, so it's kind of cool that I sent her a copy of the book that I put together for my grandparents' 100th wedding anniversary book, and it has a lot of pictures.
If you hadn't heard us talk about that book, it's a sight to behold, and just the easiness of the complexity, if I can say that, is just amazing.
That's a great way to introduce a part of your distant family, distant-ish. I mean, third cousin. I mean, like I said, I grew up with a third cousin on Long Island like she was my first cousin. She was my first friend. We were like 3 or 4 months apart. And had I known this other one too at that time, it would have been the same thing. but I just met her later by accident. And it's so weird because we lived across the street from each other in Florida, like across the highway from each other. This is going on a tangent, but it's still just the most remarkable, crazy thing that has ever happened to either one of us.
It is. It totally is. So when you approach doing your story, did you approach it from, since we both are writers of fiction and stuff, did you approach it that way? Or was it just facts and tidbits and you just tied it together and filled in the other parts?
It's definitely all the facts, because you can develop a narrative by just looking at the facts and say, oh, that's what happened here. Just like some of the photos, and the photos are the best things. They may not be what you're writing about specifically, but it can definitely give you an idea of who was there, who was in the room when the song was written. You got credit for it if you were in the room.
Yeah.
It's that same kind of thing. It's like, okay.
Well, you can see it like a grandpa was wearing a pocket watch and you're like, wait a minute, I have that pocket watch. Hey,
my mother is wearing the necklace that her great-grandmother was wearing, and I have it.
See, that's amazing. And paintings and on the walls and stuff.
And for Mother's Day, I posted this photo of my mother walking around in Darmstadt, Germany, and it was 1944 when she was there. So I'm like, there's a war going on, and she's like about 100 kilometers. Well, she's 100 kilometers away from home, and she's doing her service that the women were supposed to do. The boys were in the military, and the women did service. So they were able to come and go as they pleased. If they didn't want to stay, they could leave. It was something like that. But she decided to go ahead and go because she had finished a level of school, like her 11th grade, which got her through her normal 8 years plus 3 more. And she's like, well, I was accepted into this college to become a gymnast instructor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she got a scholarship. And so in between, I have to go ahead and do this other stuff now. Okay, so she was there, and she's walking around, and I remember my aunt telling me, oh, yeah, your mother left Darmstadt just in time because they blew it up where she was working. And then I find this photo, and it was just random that I found this photo, and I'm looking at it and said, oh, here are a couple pictures from Darmstadt. And the one I posted on Facebook was the one where you could see her the worst. It was the least clear photo, because I just really don't want to post pictures of my mother on Facebook. But you really couldn't tell what her face was like. But here she was with her finger wrapped in a big old white bandage. I'm like, oh, your klutzness or whatever saved your life, perhaps, because you had to go home.
Workman's comp.
Did you go home because of this? Because you were injured and you just said, oh, I can't work with this, so I'm just going to go home. And then they blew up the town? Was that what happened?
Or maybe your mom was smart and said,
she always could sense danger and would be like, nope, out of here. She was really great at that her whole life. But then also it was close to her birthday too, and she loved being recognized, so she probably wanted to be home for her birthday because she was turning 18.
Slammed her finger in the door.
Yeah, right.
I gotta go home.
I gotta go now. Yeah. And then, so Germany had their 9/11 in 1944 in Darmstadt. That's when they blew up where my mom was working and stuff, and she was already back home safe. So it's like a story like that. I'm going to write that one because I've got pictures and I've got questions, and I may not be right, but this is like my aunt telling me this. My mom never told me about them blowing up the town that she was doing her Arbeitsdienst in, her service work. Nope, wouldn't have told me that.
Exactly.
That's what ants are for. So, so it's little stories like that. And, that could go, I could do like a whole little mini bio on my mother and how there's all these little weird circumstances and stuff around the time right before she passed away, what happened. And like when she was in the hospital for the last time, and the chaplain that came into the room knew exactly where she was from, because that's where the Dominican nuns were originating from, and she was a Dominican herself. and the whole hospital was started by Dominican nuns.
Wow.
And they were from that town that she was from, and it was almost like she came to get her. You know, it's like there's just so many weird things. And then the pastor that performed her memorial service had been in that town and traveled it extensively with his church group. Okay.
Well,
so weird stuff like that you can write about too, just like little
it's
crazy
a movie.
Story. Yeah, it is a movie. You know, so you can keep going. It's like there's a lot of people that have Salem witch trial stuff in their ancestry. That's something to write stories about.
Yeah, one of our guests did.
Yes.
Carol. Yeah.
And if you find any letters, imagine what you could do with some correspondence,
I love letters and stuff.
File box full of letters. I mean, you could put them in order chronologically, and maybe find some pictures of the people who are writing to each other, and develop a little timeline.
Because of that whole time, the whole time frame that you would have for that timeline that's.
My mother was one of those people that saved quite a few letters, and she also saved copies of the letters that she was writing.
Oh, your mom is like...
She was a bookkeeper, but she was also doing it because she would write it out, and then she's like, okay, my English isn't so great, because she was, first language is German. So she wanted to make sure that she had written it right. And then she would copy it over to a card or something like that, and then send the card, and then she would just keep the copy. The
now, did she ever tell you about coming over here and what she thought of it at first? And I mean, did she fit in? Did she have trouble? Did she ever talk about anything like that?
Oh yeah, she went to England first and worked in a household for a year and a half, and improved her English and waited for permission to come, because it was in 1952 when she finally got here. So
and she came by herself?
Yeah, and then she went to live. No, she went to live with her mother's sister and her father's uncle, who were a couple.
Okay.
So that's, yeah.
So there's another story there.
Exactly. So they're like mother, an Essett's mother and father, because they were both related to her. And I recently found documentation that my mom had kept, because that was the way she was, where they had to in order to sponsor her back then, they had to basically do a personal financial statement, and I have it. I know how much their house was worth.
Wow.
I know how much they had in the bank, where he worked, what she did for a living. And it was really through him because, men and all, they had the power and the income and all that. Yeah, even though she was more closely related to the wife, right? It was her full aunt, where he was like a great uncle. So, yeah, so that's that kind of stuff that I have, and I'm like, should I share that with my cousins? I mean, these people have been long dead since, for 60 years at least, so I don't think there's any harm in showing their financial statement.
Yeah, why not? It's something I mean, that's cool.
Yeah,
if you have that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
People
my mom save
nothing like that.
Yeah. So, if you have a famous ancestor that for sure is yours, and how they interacted with the family and that sort of thing. The original immigrants that came over to the country, you can just go back and say, okay, well, we got here through this line from this person. Okay, so let me find out something about him. And then that's something to share with first cousins or second cousins even, because they would share them with you, and they may want to know that. Daughters of the American Revolution or Sons of the American Revolution, who was that person? Were those people? I don't have any so far. I haven't found any. Have you?
I don't think I have. Be on my dad's side for sure, because they were all colonial people from Pennsylvania and all that place.
Yeah.
And stuff. So Connecticut, Ohio, all the fun places.
Namesakes, like who was named after who? Who were the the godmothers and godfathers.
Well, that's like the Italian. I mean, Anthony
That's pretty-
was my great grandfather,
obvious, yeah.
his father, and then that breaks off to Luigi, which was a brother, and then his father. And it's like, oh, okay, So
When I did that sisters video, my great grandmother and her 3 sisters, and their names, you have a Marie, you have a Katharina, you have an Elizabeth, and Caroline Lena. Same name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so generationally after them, you have another set of those same names. And then right now, to this day, there's still a set. And I'm one of them. My middle name. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're still, and these people were all named originally after other family members, like my great-great-grandfather's sisters or his mother, and, depending. I'm not really sure where Marie came from originally, but, yeah. Yeah, she had an aunt or somebody that was named Marie. And then she was named after her. And then that skipped. None of my mother's brothers and sisters got Marie, but my mom made sure that I got it because her grandmother was her famous.
Hey, I got it too.
Yeah. Well, it was popular, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's like my mom though, and like her thing. Everybody had it. They didn't. None of the kids had middle names and stuff. I guess they were too poor and couldn't afford them. But they had. But everybody was like Marianne, Roseanne. They always had the Anne. And I asked my mom, I go, but there's no Anne in the family line. What's up with this? And she doesn't know. But for some reason, and if one named it Marianne, then the other sister had to name it Roseanne. It was kind of like, okay. Because there's roses everywhere and there's Marys everywhere, but I think that's probably just they threw it in to say break it up instead of saying Rose and everybody turned around and said what? You could say Roseanne and just one person would turn around.
that might be a Catholic thing too.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
So, family recipes are awesome because that can really get people started. You could sneak in some genealogy by sharing a family recipe and then the background on whose recipe it was and her immediate family and all of that. See, that's how you get sneaky.
Yeah.
And then the interviews on tape, interviews with older family members.
Yep, we did that with my great grandmother, my dad's grandma, and she had lived by herself. She was 96 and she fell and broke her hip. Twice had been broken into, and the second time she said the guy had cut his hair and he looked better, and stuff. And she would just keep on trekking, and she finally broke her hip, and they moved her into assisted living, and she hated it and went downhill fast. But when they first put her in there, my mom and I went with a tape recorder and did 2 hours of her we just started one thing and said, "You were born in Oregon, and how many people were in your classroom?" She named all the 12 people in the classroom.
All 12.
First and last names of the kids, and then went back and how they came across the Oregon Trail and her family did and everything. So it was like just a plethora and a couple of, I don't like that person, so I ain't talking about them and stuff. And it's like, oh, okay, they're still alive. We won't say that anything, but so we have it, and it's like, they haven't done anything with it, but we need to digitize it because it's on cassette tapes. But
you could digitize it. Yeah, you could digitize it, and you could even have it transcribed if you wanted to, and then
it was kind of cool at the time. My mom and I were like laughing because it was like, oh my god, she was dissing on this person and dissing on this person, and then it was kind of like, but she knew everything, and she kept photos of, the photos that we got from her were all marked on the back. And then she had this little paper thing, and it went from everyone who married and a kid's name, married, kid's name, all the brothers, all the sisters, da 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 da, and it went way back. So I have that. So that's kind of cool. But
and you could take it just the way it is and scan it and
but
put it
my
into
dad,
a PDF.
my dad's an only child and stuff, and we're not just close to that side of the family where the Italians are so many. We were. So it's just kind of like, Yeah, I see that. I see the history there. I could follow it back. You were with me when we did the BC stuff because it's that side of the family, and it's like, wow, there's a lot. There's royalty there.
It's so interesting because it's the same for me. It's like my father was an only child. There are no descendants beyond me, and who is going to care?
Yeah.
You know? And there's tons and tons of, most of my DNA matches are Norwegians and Swedes.
Did your dad have cousins though?
Yeah,
I mean,
but
yeah,
they were his first cousins. And that's how I met my second cousin.
Yeah, my dad's first cousins, he has two, and that was it. Because my grandpa had a sister, and that was it. So it was that part of the family was small.
Yeah, I met his first cousin, one of them.
That's good.
I met her a couple, maybe just once. But she was the one who stayed in touch with us. And then her grandson came to visit us in Florida when he was going to school at University of Central Florida for engineering. He came over. I met him when he was a baby, I think. And so he came over for dinner. So that was cool.
You know what keeps popping in my head is what you had said earlier. You got to have the beginning, the middle, and the end. Maybe it's just the writer stuff in me that's how it is. But I think that's the whole story. I mean, you just got to be able to piece it together that way.
Yeah, and each chapter can be a different little beginning, middle, and end. It doesn't have to be the whole thing.
Yeah,
it's too overwhelming.
You might find the end first, or you might find the middle first, and you just gotta
You'll never find all of it.
There's that too.
Yeah,
So,
you're gonna just know what you know. That's why it's good to have short stories.
Yeah, and like chapters. Do a chapter.
And there are writing groups in genealogical societies that people could join if they needed help with this sort of thing. You just have to see if the one near you is like that.
That's wonderful. That's a good idea.
Yeah, and then, was there a family business? Write about the family business. What kind of characters came in there? Who do they do business with? Do you have a photo of them with their ribbon cutting? Was the mayor in there? Was it a famous mayor? Are they a president now? It's like all of this crazy stuff that can be interesting.
Or did they own a McDonald's and it was Mayor McCheese? Hey.
Yeah, and he
was there with Grimace.
Exactly.
You never know. You never know.
And just specific incidents and stuff. Like my great-grandfather was hit by a car a couple years before he passed away. And I found, I looked it up, and I found the thing where he'd lost his lawsuit, where he was suing for $30,000.
Oh, wow.
During the 1940s. It's in my photo scrapbook thing that you may have seen it scroll by when we were looking at it together. But, stuff like that, it's like, oh, okay, well, what are the dates here?
Well, I know that you had found the article in the newspaper about, I had told you that apparently during Prohibition, some of the unmentionable Italians were doing underground alcohol running.
Bootlegging, yeah.
Yeah, bootlegging, to put it in a different word. And you had found the article because we were told that he was doing his bootlegging and hit a pipe and exploded, and that kind of was the end of him. And just telling you that and his name and stuff, you found the article about it.
Yeah, and that's another wonderful thing about Ancestry is you can get newspapers.com as an add-on, depending on which version you have of the subscription. So there's that, and then Google Books and Books in Family Search. I can't tell you how many things I have found in Google Books. It's crazy. Yeah. I've also found full family trees that people have already done and published on Family Search. That's in their library. They've been scanned, and it's like full like books, like hundreds of pages long. And even that a little article has so much information in it. Mm-hmm. If you just really stop and read it. I mean, it's like he was 18 years old and he was hanging out with a 34-year-old. It's like, come on. That's not your buddy. Yeah. If you have this huge family, that's shady, to me. Shady, so then,
yeah, exactly. So, and his wife. So you kind of got to go, well, what did these two do? and then you could search their records and see if arrest records come up or something like that, and then it's like, yeah, this was shady dealings. So
yeah, so there's lots of things that you could spark creativity with. But the best place to start for me is like looking through a photo album. And, time and place. Why were they there? What's going on? Who is this person? And just sometimes you'll get all kinds of records come flying in too when you're doing your ancestry specifically, or one of the other ones like MyHeritage or whatever, and you get these hints and like, is this real? I don't know, let me look into it. And you find out it is. It's like, oh my god, they were married 5 times. And so 5th time's the charm. You could just have like a little article that you send out to your family. Maybe you have a newsletter that you send it out on what do you call it, Constant Contact or whatever. You send a newsletter out to your family every couple months or so, or on holidays.
That's dedication right there.
Well, there's going to be somebody that wants to get the information out. But I think, publishing is probably the best thing to do, and to do like a hardbound book. It's like the book that I did was 180 pages, and it's more of a scrapbook, but I made hard covers and spiral. So it'll stand up on a bookshelf.
Oh, awesome. That's good.
If you did paperback, unless it's a real professionally perfect bound paperback, it may not be something that somebody's going to keep. If it's just a folder full of notes, they'll be like, oh god, all these papers, and then they toss them. But if you make it into something that looks important, then hopefully it'll get passed on to other generations through the person from their estate or something, So that's why I think I made 8 copies of this book, and I've sent out 2 already, and I'm going to send out another 5 or 6 of them to other cousins that have different branches of the family. So the research has the possibility of being out there, for when somebody's ready for it. Maybe they're not ready now. Maybe they'll be ready in 40 years from now, and they'll find this book. Like, oh, huh.
Yeah, I think I get amazed. I get amazed by people that just don't care about it, ancestry and stuff. It's just like, it's so. I've always been interested in it and stuff, and because becoming from such a part of a large Italian family, and we always did things together and still do and stuff. It was just like, once it started, it was like, oh, as I got a little older, and 14, 15, it was kind of like, oh, okay. And I like to hear the old stories and stuff. And now it's just like, oh my God, people, the information that you can find that is, and we see our families, when you find new cousins, your family hasn't been telling you the truth because they've been covering it up.
They may not even know.
Yeah. Or, they had to get married even though they said the kid came, early and stuff. And it was like, then you find their marriage certificate, and it's like, okay, same year. Hello. So it's amazing. And I just don't see how people just go, eh.
I have so many German ancestors or relatives that you can see where they got married like 3 weeks before the kid popped out, or,
see,
yeah. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and they didn't tell you that, they were a preemie. That was,
yeah.
We've had that. So, but hey, you know what? It doesn't make you love them any less. It's just, back in those times, they were becoming a nun. They went to a convent, and they ain't no nun. It's like, okay.
Yeah, so, these little stories, and you should write about your own life and what you lived through, like going through the pandemic. What happened there?
Yeah.
And then, a lot of people lost people that way, and, that's part of the story.
Yeah, so just start somewhere, and don't be discouraged if you hit brick walls, because we all hit brick walls. But just find that, just keep looking, and like Linda said, on a photo caption, something that's going to trigger, and look at those photos and find something in that photo that might trigger it. You might, they might be in a place, but you see Mickey's head in the background. You might be at Disney World or Disneyland, and it might spark something. So just don't give up. Don't give up.
Yeah.
What do you think they should start doing? Just pen to paper? Computer?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Maps?
I would just write in a little notebook and just start, keeping some notes. And then, I remember Mom telling me about this. I wonder if there's a picture, and then just you start going on fact-finding missions until it feels so natural that you know what you're going to do next and what you want to see next.
It'll come to you.
Yeah.
I think it's great ideas to write what you know first, because we're always told as writers, write what you know, and that might be the best starting place is what your relatives have told you, and then you could say, well, that doesn't sound correct, or did they really flee Italy with pizza pans, and start there and go, okay,
And genealogists seem to be well read, and they are probably good writers. If they've never tried it before, they'll find that they're pretty good at it. Because these are people that hang out at libraries.
Yeah, they should.
And so it's like, you have this stuff already. You already know.
Don't be afraid of it.
You're doing your tree and you see the relationships and you're like, wait a minute. What was going on here? What happened to him? How come they all left that town and came to this town instead? I have a bunch like that.
Yeah, there's always that. There's gonna always, every family, you cannot tell me there's not one person that didn't have something like that in their family. So, try to find it. Try to see. Ellis Island, you can go and look at passengers that came in. You just have to put their name in. And granted, they, chop their names up. But, you'll find out when they came over and stuff. And like my great-grandfather signed with the X. So that, you don't see his signature. But he was there. He came in.
Yeah. There's history everywhere. So, yep. But that's what I would be doing. When while you still have your people around, ask the questions. If you don't have them around, then see if you can get on a Zoom with your cousins, and if whoever's interested, they may want to just socialize and say, "Hey, tell me about what did your grandfather do for a living again?" Oh yeah, So
yeah, exactly. That's
the
way to do it.
And the cheapest, easiest way to do it is just to write it yourself and take notes.
Yeah, I wouldn't even worry about publishing or doing any of that stuff right now. Just get your facts together and get your stuff on paper, because don't let it swirl in your head and then, stuff happens and you don't remember. Get it down. Even if it's 5-10 minutes a day, just write down that note that, I remember Aunt Josie did ABCD, or, Uncle Fritz did, 1, 2, 3 and stuff. And then I got to check that out with Aunt Paulina and stuff. And just write a note to yourself and ask Aunt Paulina before Aunt Paulina passes away. Go to your elders and get that information squared, because time is precious. We don't have them for a long time. And they're the plethora of information that you need. Even if it's bogus, it's something for you to investigate, and it might be right next door to the truth. So,
yeah, and it just sends you in a direction, and you can maybe find some other things while you're looking under that rock.
Part of the fun is that journey and that investigation. That's totally part of the fun.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, so I guess you've drilled this into people's heads enough now.
Yeah, you think? All right. Well, we thank you guys for listening. And if you guys have questions or comments or got a good story, come over to the website, twiceremoved.net, or where this podcast is you're listening to in the notes, and Linda checks all that. And we'll get back to you. And if you got a good story, let us know, because we'll have you on as a guest. We love to talk to people about this stuff, as you can tell. So hit us up. And until then, Linda, thank you for all your information.
Well, thank you.
As always, you're a wealth of knowledge in the genealogical life world. Thank you, guys.
All
Talk
right.
soon.
Until next time.
The Twice Removed podcast is produced by Linda Anderson and Gina Glass. All opinions expressed are of our own and of our guests. For more information and upcoming guests, please visit our website, twiceremoved.net.